Good afternoon from a very cold UK. um, what I thought I'd do this afternoon is a quick catch up on stuff we talked about last week, and then just show you a few things in Affinity Photo that you might not be so familiar with because they don't appear in programs like Photos and stuff. So let me just share my screen. And to get rid of video panels. That's good. And hopefully open Affinity Photo. So a bit of advertising before I begin, if I may. Two really important things. That is, if you read messages on the message board, you will already know this. But last time we met to talk about Affinity Photo, I did mention that they're very, very keen to get as many copies of this wonderful program into people's homes as possible. And I think I mentioned looking out for Black Friday sales, and that sale is now on. And at the moment, if you like what you see, you can purchase a copy of this fantastic program on either the App Store or directly from Serif, from their website, with a third off. And think I think that in the USA, I think that reduces the price from something like $50 to $32 or $33. So it's an absolute steal. And I think that deal is running all of this week. It may well run beyond it, but my best advice is go for it. If you're thinking of getting a copy, do it now. The other thing is, many members last time very kindly expressed interest in a class that I'd run with Suffolk Mac User Group here in the UK, and asked if it was available. So I reviewed it, and it was in fact it made up the first 6 meetings that we ever held on Zoom, and it was a bit rickety. So immediately following the last session, I completely re-recorded the entire thing. So I now have a collection of high definition videos, no umming and ahhing, no interruptions from other members asking questions. It's 5.5 hours long, and quite a sizable number of people have already very kindly purchased a copy. If you'd like some more information about that, please just type in the comments more information, please, and I will pick up your name, get your email address if I don't already have access to it from Eckhart, and I'll send you the details. And with that, let's crack on. So when we finished the last session, I was talking about layers. I was also talking a lot last time about non-destructive editing. Now, non-destructive editing is fantastic for all the reasons I'm sure you'll remember. And basically that is that if you do edits non-destructively, once you've saved your file, if you reopen it days later or weeks later or months later, you have the facility to unchange, to change those, to change stuff back to where it started. So it's a much safer way of proceeding. It means that if you make mistakes, you can easily correct them. And layers is one of the methods that this program and Photoshop and sophisticated programs like these use to make stuff safe for future editing. And so you've just seen this ad, which is a collection of other Mac user groups who kindly have members with us today. And I created this a couple of months ago, and every time somebody from a different new organization joins us, I'm tasked with adding their logo to this page. Now, that could be really complicated and really boring, because you'll notice if I just swing my mouse around that all of these edges are absolutely straight and aligned with each other. So to make those changes slightly easier, I formatted this in this program in layers, and over on the right hand side in the layers panel here, you can see all of the layers that make up this document. So there are lots of them. And when I have the move tool selected, whoops, I don't know what I just did, but I'll undo it. When I have the move tool selected, if I click on any of the icons in the main image field, so I'm just going to click on the NCA mug, you'll see that it's immediately highlighted in its position in the layers stack. So for example, if I wanted to pick up these 3 images in order to move them elsewhere, I just need to locate them in the layers stack. I happen to know that they're the top 3 layers, but then I can collect those 3 together by holding down the Shift key. And now when I move one, all 3 will move. So I can move them across here. So next time a new organization joins us, it doesn't require too much moving around to organize space for the new group to join this chart. We all hope that in coming months this will get bigger and bigger and bigger. The logos will get smaller and smaller and smaller in order to accommodate them all. But I hope that gives you an idea of why layers are just so important. So as long as this document is saved as a .af photo file, I will always be able to access any one of these separate layers. So that's just a little reminder about layers. Now let's go to the first of today's examples. I'm searching for 14. So this is my welcome to my world. This is my world. So this is a theatre shot. It's a school production of Around the World in 80 Days, and it displays a problem that I meet absolutely all the time, and that is that it isn't finished. I usually photograph shows the night before they open the following day. And in that 24 hours, there's usually a huge amount of activity, whether it be amateur, whether it be professional, whether it be a school production. Everything runs up to the wire. I have actually known shows open late. They've been due to open at 7:30 and they haven't opened until 8 because somebody is still busy painting. So this is a very typical example of the sort of problem that I meet. So we've got this lovely elephant that the school has made, and you can see on this side it's got a tusk, and you can see on this side it hasn't. Now it's a useful image because it says a lot about the production. It says that, you know, the kids have gone to a lot of trouble with their sets. They've created puppets like this massive elephant thing, and they wanted to use this image front of house, but they would like it obviously to have been finished. So how on earth do we do that? And the answer is simple, actually. We use something called mask layers. Now, if you use Photoshop, exactly the same thing is called layer masks. In AP, it's mask layers. And the way that mask layers work is this, and this is just stunning, and a practice that I use virtually every single day when I'm working on images in my job. So first of all, I'm going to select this tusk that is complete. So I'm going to go up here and pick up my freehand selection tool, which I hope you'll remember from the last session. And I'm going to make a really loose selection around this tusk. It doesn't have to be accurate at all, just that. And I'm going to copy this selection onto a separate layer. The keyboard shortcut for that is Command J. So I'm just going to hit Command and J. And you can see now over on the layers panel, we've got 2 layers now. And if I just turn off the background layer for a second, you can see that the upper layer just contains that tusk. So let's pop that back again. So what on earth do we do with this? First of all, I'm just going to deselect it. And then I'm going to pick up the move tool and swing it out of the way. Now, clearly, it's pointing the wrong way at the moment because obviously the elephant's right tusk is pointing out to the left, and we need the left tusk to point out to the right. So I'm going to go up to the Arrange menu, and I'm going to choose Flip Horizontal. And suddenly it begins to make sense because suddenly it's pointing the right way. So I'm just going to zoom in on this. Nice and big. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to reduce the opacity of this so that I can see where I'm putting it, because obviously I need to align it with this stuff behind it. So I'm just going to go to the opacity slider and drop that down to about 50%. And then with my move tool selected, so you can see this band at the top of the tusk, and you can see the sort of edge of the band here. And I want to make sure that I cover that with this. So I'm just going to push that to about there. I think that will do. And then we'll pop the opacity back to 100%. So it's a mess. So how on earth do we get carefully get rid of all of this extra stuff that we've carried across from the other side? And we do that with a mask layer. Now the icon is this one. It looks like it's just a rectangle with a big hole punched in it. And I'm just going to tap on that. And you see that a mask has appeared between the top layer now, which contains the tusk, and the background layer. The way that these work is just so clever, because if you paint on a mask layer in black, it punches through the top layer to reveal the layer underneath. Whereas if you paint on a mask layer in white, it restores what's on the top layer and covers up what's underneath. So if I pick up my paintbrush over here, the program is smart enough to know that I'm painting on a mask layer. So it's made black the foreground color because I need to paint in black because I want to get rid of this. And look what happens when I run the brush over it. You can actually see immediately what's underneath. So as I paint very roughly at first, I can get rid of lots of this garbage. To reveal the background layer. And having got rid of most of it, I'm just going to zoom in even further and use a smaller brush. You know, I'm not going to waste a huge amount of time doing this, but you get the idea. And just get rid of, and you can literally attack this pixel by pixel if you want to and be absolutely whoops, I've made a mistake there. I'll correct that in a minute. But you can do this with such precision so long as you don't have time constraints. You know, it'd be quite easy to spend half the meeting finishing this. Now, if you make a mistake, and I've accidentally whopped a bit of the tusk out just there, but let's make a bigger mistake. What if the cat suddenly jumps onto my lap and I go, whoops? It just doesn't matter, because all I have to do is, instead of painting in black, is paint in white, and I can restore . So I don't know how long that's taken, but maybe 4 or 5 minutes, maybe less. I don't know. But suddenly we've got a completed animal, we've got a happy customer, and we've actually got a way of non-destructively editing between layers, which is fantastic. So going back to that stuff that I illustrated last time, when, for example, we were cutting out a sky in order to change the skyscape behind some buildings, if you introduce a mask layer, it makes it really easy to correct any errors at a later stage if you suddenly discover there are some. So this is profoundly useful when editing, and as I said, something that I use on a daily basis, and it's available in this software, and fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Right, let's move on.
Mike, I have a question.
Do you know, I was just about
Marcia, someone's ahead of you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I was just about to say, my goodness, you're all being ever so quiet.
Yeah. Mitch, can you unmute yourself and ask your question, please?
Yeah, Mike, I know you do everything in RAW. What if you don't do it in RAW? What if you're just doing regular photos? Can you still
You can't do
all
this.
this editing stuff?
Yes, this is not raw. This is not raw. So this image that you're looking at here started life as a raw image, but we're in the photo persona here. This is just a JPEG.
Okay,
So
perfect.
absolutely 100%. Yeah.
Thanks.
I got it.
Okay, Marcia, your turn.
I'm sorry about that. I'm new in this.
That's
First
all right.
time.
No problem.
This is Affinity Photo,
Yes.
and you cannot get it on the iPhone, only the Mac.
Well, you can. There's a version of there. Yes, you can get it on the App Store for iPads. I'm not sure about phones. I've never thought it. I mean, to be honest, the idea of trying to edit something on a phone would fill me
You're
with
right.
horror.
Yes.
But if you have an iPad, yes, there's an iPad version of this, and it's ridiculously inexpensive. I think in the UK at the moment it's something like £8. So you probably get
It's
it.
It's on sale for about $9.99 in the US.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
So
thank you.
So,
I got
yes.
it. Thank you.
All
So
right.
it's a very
thank you.
similar program on the iPad, but not the same. So there's a bit of a learning curve involved with the iPad version. But we've used it and we've done demos at Suffolk with it, and it certainly works. So, yeah.
Mike, Alan Kent, can you please unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes, thank you for the response about the JPEG in addition to RAW. How about the HEI Apple format?
It doesn't make any difference. It doesn't make any difference at all, because as far as color management is concerned, when you open an image in Affinity Photo, it will simply look at the metadata. It'll say, "Oh, this has got an HEICC tag on it." So that's all there is to it. It's not something you need to concern yourself with.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Mike, is this a cross-platform app?
Yes.
All right, thank you. All right, all yours.
Thank you. Right, let's move on. What am I doing next? 20. Oh, I've got to talk about. So retouching. Retouching, I think I touched on this last time we met, but retouching became really, really important to me when my mother passed her 80th birthday, because we decided that we would make a book for her 80th birthday that was a collection of family photographs that go back to the year, 1733 or whenever my mother was born. But lots of them look like this one. And so I had to kind of learn retouching in a hurry, really, in order to do this job with any sense of satisfaction. And there is a single tool in Affinity Photo. In fact, there are lots of retouching tools, but I'm only going to talk about one today because of time constraints, because this could take 2 afternoons. And it's over here. When you open Affinity Photo, it will look like that. It looks like an elastoplast. When you click and hold on it, there's a drop-down menu, and at the bottom, towards the bottom of that, there's something called the In-Painting Brush Tool. Now, for my money, the In-Painting Brush Tool is worth the price of this application, all on its own, because it is absolutely stunning. And I'll show you just how stunning in just a moment. First of all, I just want to deal with the general tones of this photograph, which is obviously faded over time, and we don't have any whites and we don't have any blacks. So we'll do what we've done 100 times before. We'll go to the adjustment panel. We'll make a levels adjustment. And I hope you'll remember this. I'm just going to drag the sliders in to meet the 2 ends of the histogram, bearing in mind that assuming that there are black areas and white areas in this image, the end of this histogram is where the black point should be, and this end of the histogram is where the white point should be. So I'm just going to slide that up there, and what a difference. So that's made a huge difference on its own. But now with this wonderful in-painting brush tool, I hope you'll bear with me, because I'm going to spend a few minutes working on this. I just need the background layer selected here. I have the tool selected, and all I have to do...
Mike, is that you on the ground?
No, no, I'm not that old. How dare you? I always start with the easy stuff. I always recommend that you start with the easy stuff, because if you start doing the easy stuff first, you just get used to the feel of working on the image, and I always leave the most difficult bits until last, because I don't know, it just works for me. Now, the trick is always to work with a brush that's the smallest size possible to cover whatever you're trying to repair. So I'm going to zoom in a bit on these creases, and I've got fingers on the square bracket keys on my keyboard, and if I hit the left square bracket key, the brush gets smaller, and if I hit the right square bracket key, the brush gets bigger. And I keep fingers there all the time so that I can actually change the size of the brush as I paint. And this is I was going to use the word laborious. It isn't laborious. It's actually, I find it really satisfying, because most of the time, do you see, it recognizes the edges of things. It's quite staggeringly clever. So I've got a scratch here. We'll just paint up that. And then we've got some major issues down here. I'm going super fast, obviously, because of time constraints, and when done properly, one would expect to spend, I suspect, at least half an hour on this image. I found that little and often seems to work, you know, rather than taking one great big sweep up here. Something's gone wrong there. Let's try that again. George, we should do this more often. I have never known Naples Mac Friends user group so quiet.
They're enthralled by what you're doing.
Either that or they all left.
They're all asleep, yes.
No,
please don't say.
They're very much interested in what you're doing.
We're all
Every time we
muted.
want to say something, they mute us.
Ah, that's
Like-
of course that's it. Yes. Now that's really ugly, isn't it? So we'll get rid of that. And we've got a few other black spots that clearly don't belong. Tiny brush, short strokes. Sometimes I'm just spotting, but you quickly get a grip on kind of what it needs to produce the best results. And there's some an extraordinary level of AI, I guess, going on in the background, because the program is all the time, I sweep my brush up, the program's looking at the pixels either side and doing its best to match both sides. So you should get absolutely seamless blends. And literally 9 times out of 10 it works a treat. This lady's face is extraordinary. It has, I think they're scratches, but it has these sort of horrible spidery sort of lines all over the place, and they're really quickly removed. I'll just work down this single scratch and then we'll move on. But I hope you get the idea. Don't ever try this with a brush. I mean, if you start trying painting over with a brush as big as the brush that I have set at the moment, you'll have a catastrophic failure. So you always need the brush to be just the tiniest bit bigger than whatever it is you're painting over. Let's just have a little. So we've gone from that to that in a staggeringly short amount of time. This tool is absolutely extraordinary. This is one of the exercises in my 5.5 hour job in which I illustrate the entire process. And believe it or not, there's only one scratch, there's only one crease in this image that's actually quite difficult to get rid of, and which I'm not going to demonstrate now because it's too time consuming, but it's this one here. And the reason it's awkward is because it's so very close to the edge of the door. So if you try a sort of sweep down this, the program has no idea whether it ought to be black, whether it ought to be creamy grey, whatever. So, but that's the only issue. All of the rest can be done with this single tool. So it's astonishingly powerful. What have we got next? More retouching.
Alan,
Yes.
can you unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes, I see those white scratches are very much brighter white than virtually anything else on the picture.
Yes.
Is it possible to say, take everything that's that particular color that my pointer is over, take everything that's color and erase it all at one time?
No, absolutely not, because the surrounding tones are different everywhere. So, well, the color that you're seeing in the creases is, of course, I mean, that's the fiber of the photographic paper. So that, and that's exactly the same everywhere. It's the same tone. But for example, here we have a pale grey either side. Here we have black either side. So there isn't a fix-all, unfortunately.
Okay, well, it was worth a
But
try.
But having said that, it isn't the hugest amount of effort to actually, as you've just seen, to correct it. I found this immensely satisfying when I was working on the family pictures, because some of them are in such a state of disrepair, and this is a fabulous example. And, you know, it's easy enough to get rid of all of these, whatever they, I don't even know what these are. It looks like somebody's been at it with a pencil or something. But it's so easy just to get rid of them and create an image that's just delightful. I have to share a comedy story with you before I leave this image. When we made this book, we had the book made in Italy by, I was a wedding photographer as well as a theatre photographer at that time, and we used a studio called Graphic Studio, which is a really high-end, beautiful print house in Italy. And so we had this book made, and I put what I think was my favourite picture of Mum on the front cover of the book. And on her 80th birthday, we presented it to her, and she unwrapped it. And she looked at the front cover, and the very first thing she said was, "I really hate that picture of me."
Oh.
Bless.
Bob McKenzie, can you unmute yourself and ask your question?
That's a great story, Mike.
I'm full of them. They're mostly tragic, unfortunately.
Tragic comedy like Shakespeare. My question is, how well can Affinity Photo work with Apple's own Photos app in terms of importing from and then saving back to, if you use photos to organize as a database and find photos later?
I think it's a bit. I don't do it, so I can't speak from experience. But I think it's a bit dodgy. It does it, but there are some things that don't get saved. I understand that metadata and stuff doesn't carry across well. That's something I'd be pleased to look into. So my answer is yes. My answer is you can definitely, because in Photos, you can set Photos preferences to edit images in AP.
Okay. So there's a caveat there.
Yeah, I believe so. I believe so.
So how do you organize your images?
I don't want to push the sale of the course, but I because most people are doing exactly what you've just outlined in the course, I make an alternative suggestion. The way which I think I explained at the last. Let me just minimize this for a second. So the way that I organize my images is this. I have an external hard drive. It's 2017 to present. And inside that hard drive, I have folders for each year. And inside each folder, I have subfolders for each month. And then inside each subfolder, I have subfolders for each job. So these are I think these are all theatre jobs, but yes, they are. So I use a reference number, which could easily be a date. I don't use dates because sometimes I might do two jobs in one day, and I would not want two jobs to end up with the same code. So I just use numerical code, 01 upwards, and then I throw all of my images into each of these folders. So they're really easy to find. So they're all stashed away on a hard drive. They're clearly labeled, and I just keep a running list of all of the titles and reference numbers.
Yeah. So if you have a standard file naming system, then you can find them by Sherlock or whatever search.
Yes, absolutely.
Got it. Okay, that's clear. Thank you. That's all I needed.
Okay, Sherlock, that tells you how long you've been on a Mac.
Yes.
Okay, Gerald Billmeyer, please ask
it was
your
you
question.
in that photograph, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Mike, I'm wondering, in your retouch picture there with the door scratch
Yes.
that you were trying to, could the same technique you used with the elephant trunk, lasso it, take it off into a separate layer, treat it there, and then merge it back? Would be time consuming, but it might work. I'm interested in your program too, your course.
Thank you. Let me just, sorry, I missed your name.
Jerry Billmeyer.
Thank you. So if I could trouble you just to pop that into the comments box, I'll make sure that the details go out to you. I think what you've just described would take much longer than the route that I used. Gosh, the route, I may as well do it, mightn't I? So the route that I used was this. I used one of the other tools, and basically from memory, I think that, oh, where is it? It's there. So I picked up a rectangular marquee and just copied that area onto a separate layer. So Command J, which pops it onto a separate layer. And I then did my work just on that separate layer, because obviously that would then not affect anything around it. So I just painted through this, and as I painted through this, it could only see the little bit of information on either side, and the job was done. So it's not that complex, but it just took a few minutes. I hope that makes sense. Please let me move on, because there's so much to get through. So here's another example, actually, just using the same tool. So this is a proper professional theatre production, fabulous musical called Once, about an Irish guitar player. And so we've got two issues with this image. One is this rather scruffily positioned microphone on the actor's head. And the other is that I know this actress, and she's lovely, and I know that she would not find that flattering. So just as we did when I was working as a wedding photographer, we help these things. We help flatter people, I guess, because they like it. So let's do the easy bit first. So I'm just going to zoom in on young Daniel's head. I've got my tool selected over here. Brush is too small. An important thing, incidentally, I didn't mention is, do remember in all these cases that we're looking at a hugely magnified image here. And this is like probably 20 times the size that it would ever be used in the press. So minor issues don't matter so much. So that's that done. I mean, it's easy. So what about Francesca and her chin? There's another persona, and it's called the Liquify Persona, and it's this one. And I'm just going to move to it by clicking on it. And you can see that this grid has appeared over the image. And basically, what this persona does is it turns every single pixel into molten lava. That's the best way I can think of describing it. It's like wet paint. That's probably a better one, actually. So every single pixel has basically become wet paint. So I can nudge it and push it in exactly the same way as you would oils on a canvas. So the first thing I need to do with her, I'm just going to zoom in a tad. I'm going to pick up this tool, which is called the freeze tool. And with a fairly small brush, I'm just going to basically mask the bits that I don't want to be affected by whatever I do next. So I don't want this end of the chin to move. I want that bit of the chin to move, but I don't want any of her sweater to move. So again, forgive me if this goes pear-shaped. I'm doing it as quickly as I can for obvious reasons. I think that should be enough. Now I'm going to pick up this nudge tool, which is called the push forward tool. And with a huge, great brush, I'm just going to push the pixels that way from bottom right towards up left. And I'm just making contact now. And isn't that extraordinary? And that may even be enough. Let's apply it and see what happens. If we feel it isn't enough, then we can come back and do some more. But that's all, you get the point. That's already much more flattering. And there's no way, after a couple of minutes of manipulation, there's no way that it would upset the actress. And the last thing in the world one would want to do is upset a member of the cast of a show. And same goes for family. You know, I think one reads of wedding photographers making very large people very thin, and that's absurd. But I think tiny amounts of manipulation just to kind of I suppose it's like very minor plastic surgery. You don't even notice it. You don't notice it, but it just looks nicer. So you have that facility in Affinity Photo as part of the package, which is fantastic. Let's move on. Any questions while I'm opening the next?
I don't see any.
Okay.
We're going to let you go through this. Go ahead.
23. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So again, one could spend the afternoon talking about type, and I won't do that. But just in a nutshell, Affinity Photo has, I think, a unique approach to type, and that is this. So this is Angel's Landing, Zion. Let us pretend that we want to use this image for the cover of a book, and we want to put the word Zion in big letters in this space in the sky. So the type tool is over here. It's one of those ones, if you click and hold, there's a text tool and a frame tool. And I'm only going to illustrate one of them today, and that's the top one. And the way that it works is this. Having selected it, you just click and drag to whatever size type you want. And certainly this is much easier than Photoshop, because you just have to make educated guesses about what point size you're going to use in Photoshop. And I find that really awkward, whereas this is just a doddle. So I can have teeny, I can have mega huge. I'm going to hold it about there, and I'm just going to type the word Zion. I'm then going to, it's a hideous font, so just double click that, go over to my font list, and I'm going to go in search of fat and podgy, because I want a fat podgy font, because I want to fill it with something. So I'm going to go down here to Cooper Standard, which looks like that, and it's way too big, but that doesn't matter, because you see these little handles at the corners and centers of each of the edges. So I can pick one of these up and just drag it in until it's the size I want. Now, if it isn't in the position I want, then I can just grab my move tool and put it wherever I want. Okay, now, having created this text, there's a million things that we can do with it. We can add all sorts of effects, and which I'm not going to do now, but over here, next to the layers panel is an effects panel, and that's got loads and loads of effects. Actually, I might use one of those. There's also a load of styles, and just by clicking on these, you can add all sorts of effects to text. And there's, hours of fun. This is something really to do, I guess, if we all have to suffer another lockdown. This is the perfect way to get through a lockdown, because there's so much to play with, and most of the time it is immensely satisfying. What I want to do is something completely different. I want to add an image to this word, and I want the word to be filled with texture that kind of sort of matches Angel's Landing with this lovely red rock. And I found this. which is just a texture image. And I'm just going to copy this. So Command C, go back to the original, make sure that I have my type layer selected in the layers panel. And I'm going to go to Edit, Paste Inside, just there. And look at that. And I've messed around with this with all sorts of images. What's lovely is the whole of that texture image has been carried across to this image. So now, as long as I've got my Move tool selected, I can actually shift it around until I find something a look that pleases me. Okay, which is amazing. And having done that, now with my type layer selected, let's just go and add an effect. So I'm going to go to the effects panel here. I'm going to add an outer shadow. This is just so easy and so very satisfying. And it looks great, absolutely great. So we've got letters floating above the landscape and a crazy effect, courtesy of Affinity Photo. So that's type. I'm going to move on to filters briefly. This program comes with over 60 different filters. And I just want to illustrate one because I love it so much. And let's just open the next image, which is 2627. So we collect Art Deco in this house. I love Art Deco. I photograph Art Deco wherever we go on holiday. This is the Rockefeller Center in New York. And I discovered this filter, which seems to particularly love Art Deco. And it's under the filters menu, along with many others, Distort, and it's just called Mirror. And this basically pops your image into a kaleidoscope. And at the moment, it's only a single reflection, but you can see from this dialog box down here, we've got a slider so that we can control the number of mirrors. And then we've got two dials so that we can revolve the base image at the input stage, and we can revolve it at the output stage. So there's lots and lots of variables here to play with, but just watch, it's just gorgeous. Hours of fun. Let me just apply it to another one. So Radio City Music Hall, the most extraordinary theatre venue. I've yet to see a show in this building, but I kind of must before I die. Let's just do the same thing. So I'm going to just go to Filter, Distort, Mirror, and ramp up the totally different sort of effect this time. But really quite lovely. So enough of that. What's next? Ooh, okay, you probably won't know what this means because nobody does. One of the big problems with retouching human flesh is that unless you're very careful, you can turn people very quickly into Barbie dolls. I've seen it 1,000 times. And the reason for that is that with a typical portrait, when you're retouching with something like the inpainting tool, it kind of turns skin into a bit of a sludge, so it doesn't have any detail. And until really relatively recently, high-end professional portrait photographers used something called frequency separation, which sounds horribly technical and difficult, but Affinity Photo has actually made it really easy. Now you can do this in Photoshop, but it's a lengthy process that requires relearning well, certainly for me, it required relearning every time I used it. But Affinity Photo astonishingly has automated it. And it's down here under the filters menu, just here. Okay, so I'm just going to open the next image. Windows 28. So this is a portrait of a young actor who was in a college production, I think. And as you see, and it hits, doesn't it? It just hits so many kids of this age. He's got acne and lots of red marks on his face and stuff. And obviously would prefer it if he didn't. And Affinity Photo just gives you an extraordinary path to get rid of all of this with incredible ease. And let's just go through the process. So I'm going to go up to the filters menu and choose frequency separation. And very quickly, Affinity Photo has done its maths and it's created two separate layers for this image. And this rather odd looking grey panel on the left contains all of the texture in the image. And this colourful but now out of focus, it appears, side contains all of the colour information. So the reason it looks soft is because all of the detail has been ripped out of it and is now sitting on this side. So I think I can pull this. Yeah, so there's all of the detail and there's our out of focus face. Now you can make a number of changes to this, but on every single occasion that I've used this filter, which includes just yesterday with two children who are suffering from a similar problem, the default settings appear to work really well. So I'm just going to hit the apply button. So when I go to the layers panel now, you see that we've got two layers. We've got the high frequency information, which is all of the detail. And then under that, we've got the color information. So I'm just going to turn off the high frequency information and you'll see the image now looks very soft. And I'm going to select the low frequency layer because that's the layer I want to work on. And I'm going to enlarge it. That should be big enough. Pick up my faithful in painting tool. And I need to be fairly careful because where any subjects have moles, and I think that's one there, and there's certainly one there and one there, it's good not to get rid of them because that's a kind of permanent facial feature. Whereas this stuff, the red stuff, is not a permanent facial feature, and give it 6 months, give it a year, and it'll be gone. So that's the only stuff that I'm going to attack. And again, I'm not going to do this with huge care because of time constraints. I'm going to work my way around these two. Whoa, don't want that. That's being obstinate. That's really interesting because that's never happened before. Ah, it's gone. Okay. So it just requires a bit of persistence. Now, just like the previous jobs, one needs to spend a fair few minutes at this to achieve a really nice, smooth effect. And it absolutely doesn't matter how smooth this gets because we're only handling color. We're not handling any detail at all. I think we'll go with that. So let me just zoom out so that you can see the whole image. And now we'll pop the high frequency layer back on, and there we are. How long did that take? 2 minutes. It's absolutely astonishing. And so that's where we started, and that's what we reached in absolutely no time at all. Fantastic, absolutely fantastic facility. So that's frequency separation. Now there's another filter under that one, which we'll have a quick look at. That's number 29.
Billy, can you unmute yourself and ask a question?
Yeah, Mike, which of the icons on the left-hand side did you use for the brush in that low freq? That one. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
It's the in-painting brush tool, which is it's my go-to tool. Whenever I'm doing any retouching of any sort, that's the tool that I pick up absolutely every time, because it just never fails. It's just brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So this is Pismo Beach at the bottom of the Big Sur, and early in the morning, and I absolutely love it down there because thousands of waders come out and you know, scrabbling around for food, and there are just birds everywhere, absolutely everywhere. It's just gorgeous, but it's very misty, and there's this amazing another automatic. So this happens sort of without me inputting anything. The moment I release my cursor now on the haze removal, it takes over and just does the job. I'm just going to click on this so that you can see the before and after, because that happens so quickly. It's very difficult to judge. So it's just down here. I'm just going to put the split view on, and whoops. Oh, come on. Okay. It is going to move. So that's before. Just look at that little group of people and what a difference that makes. And that's by doing precisely nothing apart from selecting the filter, which is astonishing. Now we can further strengthen the filter if we want. It starts to look a bit inky, if you know what I mean, if you go too far. But again, you know, I've used this with so many of my holiday pictures because we like this time of day. I quite like being out on the beach when there aren't too many people around. There's quite a lot of like-minded people out, as you can see. But it's really satisfying, and again, really simply achieved. How are we doing for time? Oh, good, just about enough time to do what's left. Let's talk about losing tour. So I'm a really, really, really angry tourist. I hate tourists. I know I'm a tourist, but I hate the way that when we went to Yellowstone, you go up to a waterfall and it would look absolutely wonderful, but some bloody moron will be climbing over the rocks because just seeing it isn't enough. They have to touch it and poke it and break it, and I really, they really, really anger me. And Affinity Photo has got this wonderful tool for getting rid of tourists, which I will share with you. I need to show it to you. I need to show you the images first so that you'll understand what's going on. So let's just open this folder. So this is a little fort ruin on the Algarve, Portugal, and I asked my family to be irritating tourists. So I have a collection of shots like this one, where people are just in the way. Oh no! Please don't open Photoshop. Sorry, I'll have to just let that open so that I can close it. Thank you. So you get the idea. So the way that this amazing feature works is that as long as you've taken enough images, and these are, incidentally, the camera's not on a tripod, it's handheld, but as long as you take enough images, and as long as every square millimeter of the fort of the subject is visible in at least one image, you can just get rid of anybody automatically, and just remove everyone. So whoops, got somebody here, somebody walking in there. And so let's just open Affinity Photo, and I'll just get rid of this and this and this and this and this and this, and go to the file menu, and it's called a stack. So I'm going to go to new stack, and this rather odd box appears with a big empty hole in the middle of it, and you see there's an add button at the bottom. So I'm just going to tap on the add button. I'm going to navigate to those images, select them all, and hit open. And by default, it says automatically align images, which means that Affinity Photo is going to process each of these images and align them all so that there won't be any sort of wobbly, fuzzy bits where the two images aren't properly aligned. And I'm just going to hit OK. And hopefully that happens. There you go. So if I go over to the layers panel, and just open it up and just have a look at these one by one. So that's one, that's two, that's three. You get the idea. Isn't that astonishing? I love this. I love this. I love it. Because even if they irritate me so much that I want to go and punch them, I don't have to look at them in my my photographs. Oh dear. Have I got time for one more?
Yes, you do.
Thanks, Sheeta.
You're welcome.
So this, I have to finish with this just because it's magical and not something that anybody would use every day. I mentioned earlier that we collect Art Deco, and we have a number of bits of Art Deco sculpture in the house. Whoops. And so the question posed is, if you've got this sculpture, or indeed anything, and in this particular case, it's about a metre wide. It's about a metre from the back of this hand holding the spear to this hand grasping the rock. But in order to get a dynamic composition, you decide that you want to photograph it kind of across, across its width. So rather than with the left hand on one side and the right hand on the other, the left hand is really close to the camera and the right hand is a long way from the camera. How on earth do you do it? And the answer is you simply can't, using traditional means, because whatever lens you're using, no lens on the planet will focus with a depth of field that would include this close-up hand and this distant hand. So in order to make this work, you do need your camera on some sort of tripod or some sort of support. But what you do is you take a big collection of images. I'm just going to hit the down arrow keys. I think this will work, won't it? Yeah. So there's the first image, and then you just tweak the focusing ring just the tiniest bit, the smallest amount that you can actually move it, and take another one and 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 another one, and you just keep going until this distant point is in focus, and you end up with this great mountain of images. And this is what Affinity Photo does to them. again, I absolutely love this. It's called Focus Merge. It's just there. And again, we're presented with this empty box with an add button. And I just need to navigate to the Focus Merge images and select all of them and click on Open. And so exactly the same things are going to happen. It's going to align them all, but this time the program's going to be searching for the bits that are sharp, and it's going to join all those sharp bits, hopefully, together. So I'm just going to hit the OK button and just watch this. It's fabulous. This is absolutely 100% automatic. I'm doing nothing. There you go. Astonishing. Now, previously I think that there were pieces of software available on the market that provided this service, but you had to buy that as a separate program. And it's just built into Affinity Photo and there if you want to use it. I think naysayers about programs like this would say, do you know what? I don't need any of that. But in practice, what I found was that the more I learned, the more I used, because when this was presented to me, I thought, oh God, that's fantastic, because I can easily do this and use this. And a bit like the disappearing tourists, it gives me huge joy to exterminate tourists. So I use it frequently on holiday, and you don't need a tripod to do that. All you need is the stamina to stand and wait, and just while other people move around. I think it's fantastic, incredible value for money. And I'm going to shut up there because I think we've probably only got a very small number of minutes left. So if you have any questions, please fire away.
Alan, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
On that tourist picture, could you just go in and erase the tourist out of the picture like you erased the scratches out of that original picture?
No, well, no. Sorry, let me share again, Alan, and I'll show you why. Because in some cases, where are they? Yeah, in some cases, this is my sister, and she won't mind me being rude about her. But look how much space this blasted tourist is covering up. You couldn't just paint over this because it's like a quarter of the shot.
Yeah.
And of course, there's no way that Affinity Photo would know what to replace her with.
I guess you could have erased the guy on top, but you probably would have had a hard time erasing her.
Yeah. And yeah. So yes, it's possible if people are small and in the background and not filling up too much space. But if they're any size at all, even this shot, deleting that area, the program's going to have to lift information from somewhere to replace my sister. And whatever gets replaced, it's such a big area that you're likely to be able to recognize that, oh, it's that patch with that shrubby thing in. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
well, I don't want to present. I just would have cropped her out of it, and then we wouldn't have gotten the whole picture. We would have got the important part in, and I would have erased him.
But cropping's cheating.
Okay, all right. One quick question. David Winograd, can you please unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yeah, this is amazing. On the group of photos that you did the bronze Art Deco effect that focused itself, how many and what sort of source photos do you need to give it input to do that effect?
I can't answer that. And for lots of reasons. I can't answer that because it depends on the aperture of the lens that you're using. It depends on the focal length of the lens, because the longer the focal length, the less depth of field it has. So the more So I'd just as a kind of finger in the air, kind of do my best and see what happens advice. It was just always just, I moved the lens the smallest amount. I mean, if I could move it 0.5 millimeter, I would move it 0.5 millimeter. Because of course, digital images don't cost us anything. And even if you end up with 30 or 40, it doesn't matter, because once you've got your final image, you can just chuck them.
Okay.
Thank you.
You. All right, it is time to say goodbye. George, all yours. George, we can't hear you.
Oh, sorry, George.
Mike,
Sorry, before you do,
go
can I
ahead.
just to say that if anybody is interested in the course, to make sure, because this will be your last chance, just put more info, please, in the chat column right now, and I'll drop you some information across, and no obligation, of course.